All right then, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Oh, I'm gonna fall over here. My name is Bill Bauer. This is CJ105, week 5. This week we're going to be talking about crimes against persons. Okay, where a person is the direct target of the crime itself. So we're going to be talking about murder, manslaughter, rape, uh, kidnapping, false imprisonment, battery, and assault. These are the crimes we're going to be talking about tonight, or today. Depending on where you are right now, I guess. For me, it's nighttime. All right, so we're going to talk about these. Uh, this is week 5. First thing I want to talk about is according to the syllabus and according to week 5 tab that you've already clicked on. I know you have, and you've read everything there. You have 2 things to do this week. Your discussion board. Again, you must have your 2 answers to questions posted in the discussion board instructions, submitted no later than 11:59 p.m. Central Time on Thursday night, and you must write an essay. Your second essay. This essay again must have a title page in APA format. It must have APA citations within the body of the paper. It must have an APA reference page at the end. The body of the paper, that's the part between the title page and the reference page, is somewhere between 3 and 5 pages. However, generally what we look at is, did you talk about the information? Did you get it done? Your assignment this week is to select just one, crime against persons. Explain the common law elements. Be sure to define them, much like I'll be doing tonight. Then research a specific state, your state or another state you're interested in. Look for their statute that covers the same crime. Invariably, what you're going to find is the state statute is going to be very long, very detailed. It's going to have probably different levels or classifications for that crime, different degrees of that crime that you won't find in common law. Be sure that you give the statute number for the state. Where did that come from? All right, that should be part of your citation. Explain generally the state law. Then, once you've done that, explain the difference between the state law and the old common law, the old English common law that we talked about in week 1. What are the differences? What are the similarities? Why did it change? Why do you think it changed? So, very straightforward paper. Crimes against persons, but just do one crime. Okay? Don't give me murder, robbery, rape, and so on, because realistically, if you did multiple crimes, you're going to have to write a 20-page paper to get all the details. We don't want to go through all that. So the first thing we're going to talk about tonight, now that you know what your assignments are. Again, if you have any questions, contact your instructor. The first crime we're going to talk about, of course, is the most serious one possible, really, murder. All right? Murder is a criminal homicide. Now, a lot of times we confuse homicide as being murder. Oftentimes it is, sometimes it's not. Because homicide refers to the killing of another person. There is excusable homicide and there's justifiable homicide. Much like we talked in defenses in week 4, they apply here as well. So if it's a justifiable homicide, then it was the killing of an individual in self-defense, part of an execution, defense of others, whatever. It's justifiable. It's a defense. Excusable homicides are equally a defense. Excusable homicides, a killing done as a result of insanity, age, and so on. Anything that would excuse the homicide, the killing. Criminal homicide is the only one that involves unlawful killing of an individual, murder. Okay? So we're going to talk about criminal homicide for the next portion here. We have Under common law, it was referred to as murder. Okay? Murder under common law had just very few parts. It was the unlawful killing of another person in existence. In other words, they have to be somebody who's living and breathing right now with malice aforethought. Malice aforethought does not mean that they planned it. Malice aforethought means that there was a criminal intent to commit the murder before the murder occurred. So I can't kill somebody and then inform, gee, I'm glad he's dead afterwards. Okay? There had to be a clear intent, malice, hate, whatever. Different ways of looking at malice. But there had to be this malice aforethought, which means there had to be an intent before the killing occurred. It's not necessarily premeditation. Premeditation was something that came about when we divided things up into degrees. So killing of a person, unlawful killing of a person, had to be unlawful. So executions, justifiable. Person who's insane, excusable. Those are not unlawful. Unlawful, there is no excuse, there is no justification, and the killing was done with malice. And it had to be a person in existence. Okay? There were no degrees in common law. Now there was manslaughter. In common law. Okay? Manslaughter in common law. However, it was not divided up between voluntary and involuntary. There was just manslaughter. Manslaughter was the intentional killing of an individual, but there was a mitigating circumstance. It's in the heat of passion or fight. Okay? So there's a mitigating circumstance. It's not with malice, per se. It's in the heat of the moment, something that caused an emotional result or explosion that caused the killing. So murder and manslaughter in common law are very simple to explain. Be sure to define, though, what a person was, what unlawful killing is, what's malice, aforethought, what's the mitigating or provocation involved in manslaughter. Modern law has divided murder generally into degrees. So modern law has divided murder into degrees, normally first and second degree. Some states will say murder in the third degree, but will define the definition will come off as being manslaughter. So we have first degree and second degree murder. So we took this original common law and broke it up. First degree murder, generally speaking, is premeditation, planned. A lot of people look at it as planned. Premeditation, however, could be just a matter of minutes, maybe even seconds. Essentially what we're looking for in premeditated murder is that the offender considered what their action was. They thought about what they were doing, what the consequences could be. Okay, they thought about it. Not necessarily that they drew out a plan and at what time things were going to happen and all this. That definitely is premeditation. But it can be just as simple, something as simple as a person took the time to think about what they were doing first. Okay? Now, first degree murder also includes felony murders. At least felony murders that are defined as a killing that occurs during the commission of one of the listed felonies. Okay? And I always use what we refer to an acronym called BARK. B-A-R-R-K. BARK. Makes it very simple. This is burglary, arson, rape, robbery, kidnapping. Okay? If a killing occurs as a result of one of these crimes, the killing itself might not be intentional. But if somebody dies because of the commission of one of these crimes, it becomes first-degree murder. We don't have to show the premeditation. We don't have to show intent to kill, because the intent to commit the felony takes the place of that mens rea requirement for murder. Okay? So first-degree murder is going to be one of those. Now, second-degree murder is going to be pretty much all other murders. There's still an intent to kill, but it's not done with premeditation. In other words, they didn't consider their actions. They didn't consider the consequences. Yet there's no mitigating circumstance. There's no passion involved. We also refer to, you'll find in second-degree murder, you'll find out many states will refer to it much as they did common law. An unlawful killing with malice aforethought, or depraved heart murder is another term they use. Depraved heart is an act so reckless, so grossly negligent, that it defies description. In other words, you're committing an act. You may not have intended for anybody to die, but the act is so serious that you just had to know somebody could die. For example, gangbangers who do drive-by shootings of homes where they know families are living. There's children in there. There's women in there, besides the person they don't like. That can become depraved heart, because shooting into a house, you have to know somebody's going to get hurt or killed. That's depraved heart. No consideration for life whatsoever. So that becomes second-degree murder. Okay? Up here. Second-degree murder in some states can also be a death that occurs during the commission of any other felony other than the 5 that I have listed here. Then we have manslaughter. In modern law today, we have voluntary and involuntary manslaughter. Voluntary manslaughter is the intentional killing of an individual as a result of provocation, or what we often refer to heat of passion. Okay, it could be during a fight. It could be suddenly coming across your spouse in bed with another person. But it's a sudden, something suddenly provokes you emotionally to react. There's no thought given to it, but there is an intent to kill. I mean, you really intend to kill somebody. But it's a sudden thing. Now, the heat of passion, however, is something that's sudden right now. Let's say a man comes home, finds his wife in bed with another man. He blows up, he leaves the house, he goes to his friend's house, and spends the next 4 or 5 hours talking to his friend about what he just found, what he just saw. And then he decides to pick up a weapon, go back to the house, and kill his wife. And the other man, if he's still there. Now we're looking at what we refer to as a cooling off period. If there is sufficient time for the individual to cool off, to reflect upon what's happened, then voluntary manslaughter won't apply. Then it becomes second-degree murder or first-degree murder. Because manslaughter involves right now, like a bar fight is occurring. You can't get into a bar fight, leave the bar, come back a half hour later with a gun and kill the person you were in a fight with. It's no longer manslaughter, because you had a chance to cool off, a chance to get away and think about things. So cooling off period can be as short as a few minutes, could be as long or maybe several hours. Never heard of a cooling off period that's lasted days. Of course, we'll usually go, hey, an hour or two, you've had plenty of time to cool off, unless you stayed at the scene. For example, if the man comes home and they're shouting and screaming for the next 2 hours, then he pulls out a gun, it may still be manslaughter. Cooling off period means they've left, they've had time to let the emotions drain a little bit, to reflect what's going on. That becomes voluntary manslaughter. Okay? Involuntary manslaughter. Now, the reason we use the word involuntary, remember, it's not the same as an involuntary criminal act, which means that you committed something while having a seizure, a heart attack, a stroke, sleepwalking, hypnosis, those kinds of things. We're looking at, hang on just a moment. We're looking at a situation in which the person did not intend, the offender did not intend for anyone to die. And there really should not have been a reason for them to die because there's no intent. But they've done something that resulted in the death. This could be something as simple, just want to make sure I'm still here. Okay, great. Could be something as simple as committing a reckless act. Okay, reckless act. Reckless acts are acts in which the offender should have known that it was dangerous, and secondly, that a normal person, a normal citizen, would find it to be something that should not happen, that it's dangerous, that they would not do it. Okay? Or the result of gross negligence. Simple negligence will not work. It has to be gross negligence, meaning extreme, reckless, negligent behavior. Carelessness won't reach involuntary manslaughter. I've had students try to say, well, person ran a red light, it was careless, involuntary manslaughter. No, that's careless driving. Maybe it's simply just running a red light and somebody died. Tragic accident, but it's not involuntary manslaughter. It has to be a gross negligent, reckless act, or the alternative is a death that occurs during the commission of a wrongful act, normally a misdemeanor, because we've already accounted for all the felonies. So if a death occurs during the commission of a misdemeanor, that can also be involuntary manslaughter. Okay? So we've talked about murder. Remember, murder in common law is the unlawful killing of a person in existence or in being, in other words they use, with malice aforethought. No degrees. Modern law, we have first-degree murder, which involves premeditation or during the commission of a felony, one of the listed felonies for felony murder, which include burglary, arson, rape, robbery, and kidnapping. We have voluntary regular manslaughter in common law. There was just one manslaughter, similar to our voluntary manslaughter today, which is an intentional killing as a result of provocation, heat of passion, fight. We have involuntary manslaughter, a death that occurs during the commission of a misdemeanor or as a result of a reckless or gross negligent act. Okay? So we talked about killing, murder. Some other type, let me get through my notes, I want to make sure I don't miss anything. Other types of crimes against persons: sexual offenses, bodily injury crimes, personal restraint crimes. 3 categories of crimes. Sex offenses in common law. Let's clear this up a little bit. Common law had 2 sex crimes. That was it. One was sodomy, which we really don't need to talk about much. Sodomy, of course, is anal sex. In common law, it was strictly illegal, usually between people of the same gender. Then we had rape. Okay? Rape today, some states still call it rape. Other states call it criminal sexual assaults and some other terms. Essentially, it's still a matter of rape. Now, in common law, rape was very defined very narrowly. Okay, rape was the forced, had to be use of force, threat of force, by a man to have intercourse with a woman who is not his wife. Okay, that's it. So the only people that could be charged with rape in common law was a man. The only possible victim had to be a woman who was not his wife. There had to be intercourse, which means, and folks, don't please don't squirm, penis inserted into a vagina. Okay. There had to be a threat or use of force to do so. All right. If there was no threat of force or use of force, it was not rape. The woman's past sexual history could be considered in a defense. Of course, today that's defeated by the rape shield laws. So it's very straightforward. There was no real statutory rape during this time either. However, somebody would have sex with somebody under the age of 7, for example, may still face some kind of repercussions in common law, but they didn't define statutory rape per se. They might stretch it and say it was forced because the 7-year-old was being forced to commit the act. Modern laws have changed this, and when you research, if you research your state statute for sexual assault, rape, whatever term they're using, you're going to find that instead of saying a man having intercourse with a woman, they're not going to say that. They're going to say a person performing penetration on another person without consent. We no longer have to prove there was a threat of force or use of force involved in a rape. We no longer have to worry about the gender of the offender or of the victim. They could be of the same gender. A woman, it could be reversed where the woman is raping the man, woman on woman, man on man. It doesn't matter. It's gender neutral in almost every state today. The other part is we changed the terminology from intercourse to penetration. Now, even in states that still use the word intercourse in their statutes, if you look at their case history, at their some of the case studies, or their definitions of intercourse in the law, it defines it much like penetration. Essentially, it is the insertion of any body part or any object to the least degree, most minute degree, into any sexual organ. Okay? So any kind of penetration with any body part, any object is sufficient. No longer have to go through the full intercourse deal that we had in common law. Also, today, spouses can be raped in most states. Now, some states will have their main statute, I believe Georgia might be one of them, or it's Virginia. They'll have in their main statute that a man cannot rape his wife, or a spouse cannot rape a spouse. But then they'll have another statute later on that defines raping a spouse. So essentially what they've done is either changed the law completely, or they've created a couple of different statutes so that a wife is still can file a complaint about being raped. A husband can file a complaint about being raped. Much more difficult to rape a man. A woman raping a man is much more difficult, but it can be done with certain types of date rape drugs and other types of drugs that we know are out there. So a woman can rape a man. It's just, as far as we know, doesn't happen as often and rarely goes reported. If a man gets raped, he's rarely going to report it. So we have those differences in statute. Of course, rape shield laws have eliminated a woman's past history. In fact, a person, let's just say person, gender neutral, a person has been dating this other person for a long period of time and then is raped. That is still allowed. Now, under common law, that would probably not sail. But today, we don't even consider what their past history was. No is no, period, regardless of past history. The other part that we have today, that we have in modern law, is statutory rape. Okay? We have statutory rape that we didn't find defined in common law. Now, it relates somewhat to the common law rape, but we redefined it somewhat. Statutory rape in virtually every state is having an adult, okay, so the person is going to have to be over 18, having sex with someone who is not of age of consent. Now, some states use 14 as an age of consent. Some, many more use 15 and 16. That's 15 and 16 are probably the majority. 17 for a few other states are ages of consent. So once the minor has reached that age, can't have statutory rape. But they've also included an age differential between the offender and the juvenile victim. Because we don't want to be charging somebody who's just a month older for rape of the minor. Let's say we have a case in which we're in a state where 17 is the age of consent. So at 16 years and 11 months and 15 days, the minor has sex with his or her boyfriend, girlfriend, who happens to be a year older. Okay, so now the year older, they're 18 years and 11 months and 15 days. It just wouldn't be fair to treat this 18-year-old who's just 1 year older as a sex offender. Because what we're looking for in statutory rape, and this is the concept that we have to remember in statutory rape cases, is it was created to protect children from adults who could take advantage of them. Okay, someone who's just a few months older or a year older, 2 years older, is not going to have the capacity to take advantage of someone who's just that much, just a year or two younger. Okay, they essentially have the same mental capacities, they have the same maturity levels or close to it. So what we look for is a age differential. And most states will use either 3 or 4 years difference. In the state I was a police officer in, the age difference had to be 4 years. If it was 3.5 years, no statutory rape. They were just boyfriend, girlfriend, boyfriend, boyfriend, girlfriend, girlfriend, whatever the case might be. But there was no statutory rape because we had to meet that age differential. Now, sometimes you're going to have a hard time finding that in the statutes, but I guarantee it will be there. There will be some type of age differential in a statutory rape case. Okay, let's talk about bodily injury crimes, battery and assault. Under common law, battery is an unlawful touching. Okay? Somebody reaches out and touches you, you didn't want them to, that's unlawful touching, it's a battery. Now, normally we view battery as somebody hits somebody, they kick somebody, that becomes a battery. But any unlawful touching that is done in a hateful, angry manner would be sufficient. So if somebody gets mad at you and they start punching you in the chest with their fingertip, that's a battery. An assault, under common law, is simply an attempt. Remember, we talked about a week or two ago, we talked about attempt is an inchoate crime. Assault is an inchoate crime because it's simply an attempted battery. We just got to use a different term for it. But assault is an attempted battery, a threat to commit a battery, an attempt to do so, and it fails. Okay? Assault is, as because it's an attempt, it's a specific intent crime. Battery is a general intent crime. It's a general intent crime because if I take a swing at somebody and miss but hit a bystander, I can still be charged with battery even though my intended victim was not the one I hit. Battery, unlawful touching, assault is the attempt. Many states today have combined these into one statute called assault. And when you see the definition of assault, it's going to include the actual harming of the individual, the attempt to harm an individual, and so forth. So it's still, what they've done is combine battery into the assault statute. But they're still there. You'll still see the definitions separated. Now, there's a difference between aggravated assault and battery and assault and battery. Simple assault and battery is the attempt to or actual unlawful touching resulting or with the intent to result in bodily harm. I punch you in the nose, you get a bloody nose. I punch you in the mouth, you get a bloody lip. I punch you in the arm, you get a bruise. It's causing a bodily injury. Aggravated assault, aggravated battery, is the attempt or actual application of force with intent to create great or serious bodily harm. In other words, you hit somebody, they go down to the ground, they're semi-conscious, and you keep hitting them because you're intending to cause more harm. Multiple assailants, if 3 or 4 people attack you, that could be an aggravated assault and battery because that many people, they're each attempting to harm you, going to cause great bodily harm or serious bodily harm. Anytime a weapon is used, we can argue that it's going to be aggravated assault, aggravated battery, because the use of a weapon indicates an intent to commit serious or great bodily harm. So that's the real difference between simple assault and battery, aggravated assault and battery, is the amount of harm intended or actually inflicted. Let's move on here. We got a couple more things to talk about. Personal restraint crimes. These become somewhat complicated in state law. Okay, restraint crimes, folks. First one, kidnapping. Kidnapping under common law was the asportation, which means movement of the victim for whatever reason. The victim does not want to go with the offender. The offender takes the victim, usually for ransom. In fact, under common law, original common law, had to be for ransom. But it's asportation, movement. Now, the movement didn't have to be great. The movement could be just from this room to the next room. That's kidnapping. Didn't have to be a lot of movement involved in this asportation idea. But it did require some type of movement. I'm taking a person, I'm moving them for some purpose, but they don't want to go. Okay? The other one is false imprisonment. False imprisonment is prohibiting an individual from leaving. I'm not making them move. I'm not forcing them to go somewhere. But I'm not allowing them to go anywhere. I'm not allowing them to leave. So, for example, you lock somebody up in a closet. That's false imprisonment. They can't get out. The door's unlocked and they can walk out on their own. It's not false imprisonment. But if you lock them in a closet, that becomes false imprisonment. You're not moving them anywhere. You're not making them leave. But they can't go anywhere. False imprisonment, sometimes in the states that still use it. Some states have combined kidnapping and false imprisonment together into one statute. But many states that have false imprisonment as a statute will use it in domestic cases sometimes. You've probably all heard or seen, had friends, whatever. They get into a domestic fight. And one person in the fight, the argument, wants to leave. They try to go out the front door. They're going to get out of there, cool off. The other person blocks the door and doesn't let them leave. If there's no other way to leave the home, that would become false imprisonment. Now, if they can turn around and just go out the back door and the other person doesn't stop them from going out the back door, no false imprisonment. But false imprisonment is keeping somebody from movement. Kidnapping is moving them. Doesn't have to be far, but moving them. Okay? So that's it's really a kind of a fine line between the two. And some states just ignore the whole thing, and false imprisonment is part of their kidnapping law. Okay? But kidnapping, like you said, in common law, taking a person who used to be, when it first started, had to be a member of the royal family, and they were kidnapped for the purpose of ransom. Then it kind of filtered down through common law. Like I said before, common law took several hundred years to develop. Over those hundreds of years, it became where just asportation of any individual who did not want to go became kidnapping. False imprisonment isn't movement of anybody, it's keeping them from moving. So really fine difference. And as I said, states still maintain these particular definitions fairly straightforward, although some states have combined kidnapping and false imprisonment together under one law. So kidnapping, false imprisonment. So tonight we have talked, or today we have talked about several of the crimes against persons. I would also add in sometimes robbery. Many authors, many experts will include robbery as a crime against persons because it is personal. Robbery is one of the property crimes that happens person to person. There's a threat. Robbery is an assault with a theft. So it's a property crime because the object is to steal property, but because we're assaulting somebody to do it, it can be arguably a crime against persons. Normally, and for this course, we're going to call that property crime. We'll talk about that next time. Again, if you have any questions, concerns, or problems during the rest of this week, be sure to contact your instructor. We will end this particular lecture.